What's going on, everybody? It is Chase with the Chase and Shep Show. It is my solo day. It is Chasing Sunday, and allow me to adjust myself here. I apologize in advance for the half-assery of tonight's episode, but I assure you it's for good reason. Um, Usually, I try to get the videos edited and what the hell? I uh, I try to get the videos edited and looking good. Uh, and cut out all the uhs and pauses and stuff like that, or we go live. Um, but we simply just didn't have a whole lot of time this week because we have a lot of really cool stuff coming up. Some stuff has really popped off. This 1 week in 2021 has been better than the entirety of all of 2020 combined. But today, as promised, we're going to be talking about the films of Robert Rodriguez. Uh, I started at the end of December when his new film dropped on Christmas Day, We Can Be Heroes, which was a sort of pseudo sequel to The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. I've always been partial to Robert Rodriguez's kids' films because, as not this adult, but adults, tend to look at these films and look down their noses at them, at the corny CGI and dialogue and everything, and just think, oh, these are terrible. But I grew up with these films. I grew up with the Spy Kids movies. I was still a kid when Shark Boy and Lava Girl came out, and these were all, I mean, classics in my eyes. This was my first exposure to Robert Rodriguez, was his kids movies. And if you're an aspiring filmmaker and you're trying to learn film, I highly recommend, if you haven't already, to look into Robert Rodriguez, because there's a lot to learn from this man. He is most definitely a self-made man in Hollywood. Um, and most of the time, especially, check out the bonus features on the DVDs and Blu-rays, because he usually offers, a lot of them have 10-minute film schools on it, which is, that was some of my earliest days of film education, were the bonus features on Robert Rodriguez DVDs. So after watching We Can Be Heroes on Christmas Day, uh, I really wanted to revisit his whole repertoire of films, because I was always such a big fan. Um, and then I fell out just a little bit with Robert Rodriguez there for a minute, where I felt like he was just rehashing a lot of his own stuff, because I watched the film Four Rooms, where himself, Quentin Tarantino, and two other directors, um, each directed a segment of this film that took place in a hotel and was about this skittish bellhop played by Tim Roth. Um, I remembered enjoying it, but Robert Rodriguez's part in this movie, his segment in this movie, so much of this segment, was Spy Kids. I recognized it all from Spy Kids. Um, and I went straight from that to seeing, I think, like Machete Kills or something like that. And in there, the dick gun comes up, and some shots, from previous movies. And I'm all for callbacks and homages, to your own little universe and stuff like that. But to me, it just felt, sometimes, like, when I fell out of love with Robert Rodriguez at the time, I just felt like it was a little lazy. But I'm happy to say that I found my love of Robert Rodriguez again, revisiting all of his movies, and even don't take issue with the ones that caused me such problems in the first place. Uh, he has 20 films under his belt, and I got to 18 of them. Road Racers, I did not get to. That one's not as readily available as the others on this list. And I have actually never seen Road Racers. It is now the one Robert Rodriguez movie I have never seen. So I am looking forward to finally getting the chance to see that film someday. The other one I did not get to this time around was Four Rooms, but like I said, I've seen that one before. And to get that one out of the way, he only directed one segment of that movie. And that segment was like an R-rated prequel to what would eventually become Spy Kids. Whereas there were no spies in this one, it was just two kids in a hotel room, while their parents went out on a date, and they eventually find a dead hooker in the bed, if I'm remembering all this correctly. Uh, And of course, as usual, potential spoilers along the way for some of these movies. Uh, but there's a lot of stuff in the Four Rooms segment of Rodriguez that would go on to be in Spy Kids. The young boy had the warts on his fingers. A lot of the dialogue was exactly the same between the siblings that would you'd later hear Carmen and Junie have in Spy Kids. Um, so that's Four Rooms. Those are the two we're not going to get to today. So I'm going to start at the very beginning in 1992 when Robert Rodriguez first busted onto the scene with El Mariachi. He made this movie for $7,000, one camera, and it is to this day probably one of the biggest testaments of uh, independent filmmaking and what can be done without a budget. Uh, I remember the first time I saw it, I was a little young. I didn't really grasp the whole thing, especially with it being one of the earlier foreign films I had seen, because the whole thing is in Spanish. Um, and I sort of watched the mariachi trilogy in reverse. Uh, but we'll get into the other two installments a little later. Uh, but El Mariachi, yes, like completely in Spanish. He made this movie himself, and it tells the story of a mariachi that comes to town, wrong place, wrong time, and what unfolds after that is this fantastic little shoot 'em up movie where El Mariachi is being mistaken for this guy also walking around with a dressed in black and walking around with a guitar case, and it sets up this fantastic uh, little shoot 'em up Mexico trilogy or the Mariachi trilogy, because his next film would be Road Racers, but like I said, we're not going to get into that one. That was 1994. But in 1995, his next film was Desperado, which was part two of the Mexico trilogy. And the main actor in El Mariachi was replaced with Antonio Banderas. Even though the guy who played El Mariachi in the first movie does come back in this movie as a different character, as do quite a few other people from the original movie. They all play a lot of cameos in this. Uh, this was one of the first times we got to see Rodriguez work on a bigger budget, even though this at the time was still a lower budget movie. It has Antonio Banderas and Salma Hayek and Steve Buscemi, Danny Trejo, who is a second cousin of Robert Rodriguez. And something I noticed going through this marathon, and this has to be a testament to how Robert Rodriguez is not only as a filmmaker but as a person. Um, just about everybody he has worked with at least twice in all of his filmography. I would say Salma Hayek, Antonio Banderas, and Danny Trejo are definitely the three off the top of my head that have probably worked with him the most times. With Danny Trejo, I think holding that record. I think he's worked with him for 11 of the 20 movies that he's done. Um, so Desperado was almost an English language remake of El Mariachi before it became a sort of continuation of the story of El Mariachi. Again, following that sort of shoot 'em up style of genre. And it really, with every single movie in this trilogy, it ups the ridiculous scale every single time. Uh, it's getting crazy when they've got the guy with. I mean, one guy starts shooting rockets out of his guitar case, and then the other guy is spraying bullets out of his, and it's just pure insanity. And as I got into Robert Rodriguez adult films, I realized that there's just like a switch that's flipped, because essentially at the end of the day they're like the same thing. His kids movies and his adult movies are both ridiculous fun, uh, but there's just that toggle switch for kids and adults, and he just kind of flips it on and off. So it's either really for kids or really for adults. Um, so his film after Desperado, the same year, was his segment in Four Rooms. So not his entire film alone. But we've already touched on Four Rooms. So in 1996, I thought about ranking these movies and then realized it was going to be fucking impossible for me to do. There's definitely a handful that are my least favorite and a handful that are my most favorite. But all in all, I would say my number one after going through and watching all of these, um, it wasn't much of a contest. 1996, From Dusk Till Dawn, which was my favorite movie of December and my top 12 movies of 2020. And it's just so much fun, dude. It's just such a fun movie, and it just exudes fun, and it's just insane. It's just crazy, a good time at the movie. And Quentin Tarantino, apparently this is not the first time they had worked together. I didn't realize, this would be the third at least, because Quentin Tarantino played a small role in Desperado, and he would direct a segment in Four Rooms as well. So I love him in From Dusk Till Dawn. I love George Clooney in From Dusk Till Dawn. They just drip cool, even when they're just so scummy and shitty, and you just like, you're like, why don't I hate these people? I should hate these people, but they're just so goddamn cool. And a lot of his characters are like that. And I'm currently watching the TV show. I just started watching the From Dusk Till Dawn TV show, and I think I'm like, uh, I've watched 3 episodes now. I'm really digging it. I like that it's essentially just like an expanded version, or at least the first season is an expanded version of this film. I think the guy who plays Seth Gecko, George Clooney's character in the show, is great in the role. I think he is almost on par with George Clooney. Um, the guy who plays Richie Gecko, Quentin Tarantino's character, he's he's creepy, but he wasn't creepy like Tarantino was creepy in that movie. It's a very different vibe, and I definitely would take Tarantino over the guy in the TV show, and his vibes and why he was crazy and stuff. And I get it; they're doing different things in the TV show, so they've switched it up a bit. But so far, I'm very much enjoying it, and I'll have to at some point watch the other two From Dusk Till Dawn movies, because I've never seen those before either. But as I said in my review of this last week, and because I talked about it last week, I won't get into it too much here. Um, I like, if you don't know anything about From Dusk Till Dawn, um, don't look any further into it and just go watch it. You know, that's my advice to you, to get the best experience out of it. 1998, 2 years after the release of From Dusk Till Dawn, is another one of my favorites, and quite possibly his most underrated film, in my opinion. The Faculty, um, starring a bunch of famous kids of the 90s. It's got Elijah Wood in it, Usher in one of his first acting roles, Josh Hartnett. There's a lot of people in this movie, and it is the story. It's essentially Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Rodriguez style, and it's definitely one of his most contained movies, or I'd even almost go as far to say one of the least Rodriguez-y of his uh, filmography. And in this case, it's not a bad thing. I really enjoy it in this one, but there's a movie down the list that I did not enjoy that in. We'll get to that later. But The Faculty is just, again, it's a lot of fun. The script was by Kevin Williamson, who wrote the Scream movies, uh, and that pairing I thought worked very well. And I just think it's an underrated Robert Rodriguez movie. I think it's an underrated horror movie. It's funny. It's got a great cast, and it's just pure, late '90s horror fun. It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a Texas high school. Uh, so if you haven't seen The Faculty, again, this is one I'd highly recommend. It's definitely up there in my top Rodriguez movies. Now, the next 3 movies on this list, again, if I had to make a top 5 of the Rodriguez movies, I'd have to bunch these 3 together and just say the Spy Kids trilogy, because this for me was one of the earliest things that got me into filmmaking. Was Spy Kids. Uh, and so the first one came out in 2001, and the original Spy Kids was actually the very first movie I left the theater in the middle of. I left the theater, and my reason for that being, my grandmother took me to see it. I remember this very vividly. My grandmother took me to go see it, and 2001, I would have been 6, I think. I don't know. Sure, 6, 7. I don't know. Fuck it. Um, and we're at the theater, we're seeing this movie, and I do believe I ended up seeing every single one of these in theaters after the fact, but it scared the living shit out of me when and when the scene comes around where they change Cheech Marine into a Foogly. I looked at my grandma and I said, let's go, we gotta go, this is too much for me. It freaked me out, and we left. But later on, my grandfather would purchase the VHS for me, starting my, thanks to my grandfather who started my movie collection that is now over 1,000 movies. Spy Kids was one of the building blocks of that collection. I had the first one on VHS, and I watched it all the time. And something I learned doing doing this marathon is that Robert Rodriguez movies are probably some of the most quotable movies in film history. There were so many of these movies that I, even having only seen some of them one time, uh, I could practically watch these movies with my eyes closed. There was a lot of times, especially with the Spy Kids movies, because I'd seen them so many times. Uh, I was doing dishes in the kitchen while I had it on and stuff like that, and I would just have my back turned, and I would be saying the lines before they happened. Uh, because it was such a huge part of my childhood. I'd talk into my watch because of this movie. I wanted to be a spy kid. I just thought it was so cool, and it just goes to show Robert Rodriguez, he gets kids. He definitely understands what is fun for kids. And he's probably my biggest inspiration as far as if I ever do set out to make a kids movie, I'm definitely going to look to Robert Rodriguez and what he does. Uh, so in 2001, we were introduced to Spy Kids. And the next year, 2002, we get Spy Kids 2, Island of Lost Dreams, which I also loved. And to me, I feel like even watching him again this time, it was hard to even rank these three Spy Kids movies and be like, oh yes, this one's the best over this one. Because in a way, I feel like they're all on par with each other, and they're also movies like if you don't like them or you didn't grow up with them, don't bother as an adult. Because you're not going to understand. You're not going to get that same sense of fun out of it, I feel like. But your kids are going to love the hell out of it. And Spy Kids 2 was so much fun. And that was one of the first DVDs I had in my collection when the transition was happening in the world from VHS to DVD. I remember, again, my grandfather buying me Spy Kids 2, Island of Lost Dreams. And at the time that came out, I believe that came out around the same time as Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets on DVD. And I remember a friend of mine and I um, watching. I mean, those were the two movies I had on repeat all the time in 2002. Those movies you could always find in my DVD player, and I scoured those movies. Bonus features. Um, Island of Lost Dreams had the Alexa Vega song at the end. I forgot the batteries, and she's singing and dancing and stuff. Um, and then 2003 would not only close out this Spy Kids trilogy, even though, yes, there is one more Spy Kids movie, and I do know this, and we'll get to that later, but I feel like the Spy Kids trilogy should be separated from Spy Kids 4. But Spy Kids 3D, Game Over, came out in 2003, and I most certainly remember going to the movie theater to see this because this was the first time I'd ever seen a 3D movie. I didn't know nothing about 3D until Robert Rodriguez introduced me to it, similar to a lot of other things in film. He was my gateway for a lot of things. So I went to the theater and I saw this in 3D and I thought it was the coolest fucking movie I'd ever seen in my life. The sets and honestly watching it now, the CGI and stuff is very like corny and stuff, but I feel like it works still. I feel like even in 2021, it still works just as well as it did in 2003. I think it's all still so cool. The bike races, the I love the like put on your 3D glasses now, and he'd revisit that again in Shark Boy and Lava Girl, where put on your glasses now, and he'd always have a moment in the movie where the character would also put on glasses of some sort and be transported into this other world. And I loved that sense of immersion because that stuck with me so hard. And again, Spy Kids 3 just like was all over my childhood. I saw it in theaters and I was obsessed with it. I kept the 3D glasses. Um, and then I remember when it came out on DVD and we were at a friend's birthday party and we're all drooling over Alexa Vega. And on the bonus features of that one, there was like a little concert video of Alexa Vega. See, even now, Alexa Pina Vega. Now she's married. Sorry, fellas, but it was a game over, more like game changer for a lot of people, especially young people who would later on become film lovers. I think the Spy Kids films formed a generation of filmmakers. The ones who were too young to indulge in his mariachi movies and From Dusk Till Dawn and The Faculty. And I was too young to see those movies at the time. I would have had, no idea what I was getting myself into. Uh, and that's also something that will factor in later. This is definitely becoming my personal history of Robert Rodriguez movies and my experiences with them rather than getting into it. But like I said, today I'm improvising because we just didn't have as much time this week as we thought we would. So in 2003, not it was the year for threes, I guess, because not only did he cap off his Spy Kids trilogy, but he also capped off his mariachi trilogy with a movie that was quite possibly one of my first exposures to the adult Robert Rodriguez world. Definitely the one that made me fall in love with it. Once Upon a Time in Mexico. Uh, Coming back to El Mariachi, Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek. They brought Johnny Depp into the fold on this one. Willem Dafoe, Mickey Rourke. Fantastic cast. Some great lines in this movie. Are you a Mexican or a Mexicant? We call him El for short. That's Spanish for the. I mean, just hilarious. It's just so, and that was something else I noticed across all Robert Rodriguez movies is their sense of humor. I mean, there's not a one of these movies that does not have a sense of humor. I feel like it's very present. There's one movie that I feel like doesn't have these things, and again, we're going to get to that later. Um, but Once Upon a Time in Mexico was just, again, it was a game changer for me personally as a filmmaker. Um, this absurd world of hyper violence and just ridiculous action and shoot 'em up. Johnny Depp being blinded. Watching it the other day for this marathon was the first time I'd watched it in my adult life, I suppose, because the first time I saw it, I was probably late junior high, early high school the first time I saw it. And so, I definitely enjoyed it. I thought it was cool at the time, but I didn't understand uh, the nuances and the story and stuff like that as much as I do today. I definitely have a much deeper appreciation for the trilogy as a whole. Uh, and so again, I'd say the Mariachi trilogy is definitely is uh, it's the flip. It's for the adult trilogy would be the Mariachi trilogy, and the kids trilogy would be the Spy Kids trilogy. Uh, because those are my two exposures. That's where I realized the flip existed, where he just, he could turn it on and off, but it was still that same ridiculous, sometimes over the top fun in every single one of these movies. I mean, out of all 20 of these movies, there's not really a whole lot of times where his love of cinema does not bleed through into all of these. It's also worth noting that if you look at the credits of a Robert Rodriguez film, you will see his name in the credits. Depending on the movie, sometimes as close to like 14 times. He does so many things in his own movie. He writes, he directs, he scores them, he edits them. He's his own director of photography. He does the visual effects. So many of these movies, like a lot of the Spy Kids movies, he did the visual effects and stuff for, or was at least the visual effects supervisor on. And I mean, a lot of this shit was like practically made out of his garage. He's like the master of low budget filmmaking, and his love of film and the changing landscape is it's super apparent. um he's constantly transforming with the times. He's constantly wanting to do new things, and just as he his mariachi trilogy was like a love letter to these uh shoot 'em up films and genre films. uh and his Spy Kids films were, he was introduced to digital filmmaking, I think, between Spy Kids 1 and 2 by George Lucas, and he took to it. He wanted to know more about it. And I feel like, his love of 3D filmmaking came into Spy Kids 3 and introduced a whole generation of people to 3D film before it became the boom that it would become 6 years later in 2009. Um, so he capped off those two trilogies, and as I'm saying now, he changed the game again. He made a film practically untouchable. I don't think there's. I mean, there's definitely been imitators. There's been movies that have tried to be like this, um, but nothing has ever come close to Sin City. It came out in 2005, and this was one of my favorite movies in high school. Was Sin City. But when I was really falling deep in love with the adult film side of Robert Rodriguez, Sin City is just such a slick, cool, badass movie, and there's still nothing that quite compares. Um, even the sequel would later be, just kind of more of the original Sin City. Some people didn't care for it, but again, that's later on in the list, and we'll talk a little bit more later about Sin City too. But the style, it was based off of a Frank Miller comic, and it was about 1 year before 300 would come out, and Zack Snyder would be doing Frank Miller's 300. And Sin City was so loyal to the comics that Frank Miller got a co-director credit just because they used the comic book as a storyboard. If I can't stress this enough. If you want to learn how to make movies, buy Robert Rodriguez movies, watch the bonus features because you're going to learn a lot. And Sin City was a game changer. It changed a lot as far as digital filmmaking goes and what can be done, and it was super stylistic. It was the closest thing you'd seen to a comic book come to life on screen. And the only movie I would even put close, besides its true imitators, a movie that I would say was genuinely a comic book come to life in a great way, was Scott Pilgrim versus the World, which is another one of my favorite movies. And it's just got a great cast too. Jessica Alba, Bruce Willis, Mickey Rourke is back in this one as Marv. Elisha Wood is back in this one. A lot of people that he's worked with before had come back for this one. The whole black and white aesthetic, and then Quentin Tarantino comes back to be a special guest director. He's credited as a special guest director, which can't tell you any other movie I've ever seen with the special guest director credit. And Quentin Tarantino directed a scene in the car between Benicio del Toro and Clive Owen just talking. And again, if you're a fan of Quentin Tarantino, you know how much he can do with just two characters talking. And it's a great scene and a great movie that I have to admit today, watching it now doesn't quite have the same effect it did back then, only because digital filmmaking has come so far, and for it being a noir throwback sort of movie, especially some of the content, the subject matter and content in this film, It's definitely not for the PC culture of 2021, and so I don't want to say it didn't age well, but I just don't think it has the same impact today as it did. I mean, if you see Sin City before you see anything else, you're probably still gonna be like, "Damn, this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen." Or if you're like a teenage boy, yeah, you need to see Sin City because that's gonna change your life. It's pretty slick. So in 2005, not only does he do, digital sensation Sin City, but he also does the digital sensation The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Uh, Also released in 2005. This was his second foray into 3D, and I remember The Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl 3D, and I don't remember if I saw this one in theaters as a kid or not, um, but I loved it. I loved it. I was obsessed with it. I remember having the books that he was writing at the time, and I was very into Shark Boy and Lava Girl. I would pretend to be Shark Boy, when I was swimming in the pool and stuff, because they weren't Shark Boy products, but they had the fins and the goggles that were like sharks, and so it was very easy to go out in the pool and pretend like you were Shark Boy. And it's a movie that this was the movie I ended my marathon on, with the intention of rewatching We Can Be Heroes again afterwards. But um, it still holds up. I'm 26 years old now, and I still had fun with this movie. But again, it's one of those things that if you did not grow up with this movie, and you're an adult and try to go back to and try to get into this, like you might enjoy it if you have the right mindset for it. But honestly, I just don't think it's going to appeal to you. You might just see it as shitty filmmaking. But again, I just think it's a testament to Robert Rodriguez knows what kids want. To the point that this movie was co-written by his then, I want to say, I can't remember. I think he was 7 years old. Like his son co-wrote. Excuse me, his son co-wrote the movie with him. Um, these were based off of his child son's ideas. So at any point you're watching this movie and you're like, this feels like it was written by a child. Well, it was. So you and your adult attitude can just fuck right off, because this isn't for you, it's for the kids. And again, I just think, yeah, again, having watched it as a kid, I loved it. It was one of the best movies that came out when I was a kid, as far as I'm concerned. um and it's just so much fun. And actually watching it now, there's so much like uh dark adult storyline going on a little bit here that I didn't notice as a kid, and uh maybe wouldn't have noticed had it not been pointed out to me, reading some like trivia facts regarding Max's parents fighting all the time, and why he escapes into his imagination, and them being on the brink of divorce, and quite possibly having lost like Max may have lost a sibling, and all this other stuff. It was very interesting. I read into it a little bit. Um, Something though that I've definitely noticed is, as far as like continuity in some of his series goes, some things get thrown out the window. I feel like Spy Kids was maybe the most consistent, as far as like uh this happened in the last movie and we're maintaining continuity through each one. Because the Mariachi trilogy just kind of threw caution to the wind with that sometimes, and would just kind of do whatever at times. And I feel the same way about the Shark Boy and Lava Girl sequel, because I was watching the original Shark Boy and Lava Girl and thinking back on We Can Be Heroes and being like, wait a minute, I have a lot of questions regarding the jump from point A to point B, but whatever. Um, 2007 was a movie that I was too young to watch the first time I watched it. Scared the shit out of me. I was not. I wasn't like a horror movie kid at the time. Uh, but that would literally come like later on this very same year. I would get my love of horror movies, and I immediately revisited this film, Grindhouse, with Quentin Tarantino. Uh, Quentin Tarantino's film was called Death Proof, but right now we're just going to talk about Robert Rodriguez's movie Planet Terror. This one is quite possibly up there as one of my favorites as well. Planet Terror was, again, it's something I had never seen before. This Grindhouse double feature thing, the my introduction to Grindhouse film and the genre, like the exploitation films and stuff like that. That this was my first viewing of the pairing of Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez as a team, and I was in love with this movie. I was scared shitless the first time I watched it, and I turned it off, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't. But when I revisited it, I loved the hell out of it. And the trailers, between the fake trailers in between, are directed by some of my other favorite filmmakers. Not Eli Roth. Eli Roth was one of them, but he's not one of my favorite filmmakers. But Edgar Wright directed one of them, and Rob Zombie directed another of the fake trailers. Uh, and one of those trailers, a fake trailer, would go on to become a real movie. But Planet Terror again had a lot of repeat actors in it. Bruce Willis, Tarantino makes an appearance in that one. Rose McGowan is in this one. I don't think she may have been in another Rodriguez movie, but I can't think of what else she might have been in. Uh, but again, this is just so over the top, crazy. Josh Brolin is in this one. Uh, and it's not for everybody. It's just like you either like Robert Rodriguez movies or you don't. Plain and simple. There's very few movies that are like going to appeal to a more general audience. Very niche filmmaker, I'd say, but in the best ways. Uh, so it was 2 years later after Grindhouse, he would go back to do another kids movie in 2009. And this one I think is his most underrated kids movie. It's called Shorts. The full title being Shorts: Adventures of the Wishing Rock, I think is what it's called. Um, I This wasn't the first time I'd seen it. This is a rewatch for me, but rewatching it now, I actually really liked this movie a lot. It's hilarious. It's so much fun, and it's his take on the anthology format. You know, these kids get a wishing rock, and the whole movie is told in a series of shorts. And again, this is a movie made for kids, but this was one of those times where he got to work with a big studio, and he this was a Warner Brothers movie. So this was a Warner Brothers backed Robert Rodriguez movie, and this was a case of him working with a studio, but a studio letting him be Robert Rodriguez and letting him do his thing, while it also still feels like a nice, polished Warner Brothers movie. And I think that all really works in its favor. And if you want to see James Spader be like a crazy Jeff Bezos type character, this is the movie for you, because it's just out there. It's again, the ideas of kids, man. It's going to appeal to kids, no doubt about it. And the next year, he in 2010, that fake trailer that would later become a real movie from Grindhouse, Machete, Machete, Machete Cortez from Spy Kids. There's some debate as to whether this is the same Machete. It usually says that it is not. There's a lot of things that say this is not the same character from the Spy Kids movies, even though his name is Machete Cortez and he's played by Danny Trejo. They've got different lineage. They've got different families and stuff like that. But isn't it more fun to believe that he's the same? Because come on, it's that bridge. It's that bridge between his kids' movies and his adult movies, and there is nothing more apparent of that switch being flipped than the two machetes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Machete. He gets the girls. He kills the bad guys. He does all this stuff, you know. And I was actually very surprised to find out that this was Danny Trejo's first lead role. I don't know if that's true. I'd have to look a little more into that, but that's insane if that's the case, because Danny Trejo's been in like 400 movies or some shit like that. He's a legend. But he gets to have his time to shine. And I gotta say, rewatching it this time around, um, Rodriguez was onto some shit in 2010, because I'll be goddamned if that movie does not echo a lot of the issues we've just dealt with our current president. I feel like Robert De Niro's character was very similar to how Trump would be, about 6 years down the line. There was the whole storyline of the border wall and all this other stuff, and very interesting. And it had, this whole message of, you know, in a weird, exploitation sort of way, it opened up this dialogue about immigration in America. And again, it's a movie that you can't sit here and try to judge as like a film critic. Like, you just have to have fun with it. Don't try to fucking analyze Machete or Grindhouse or any of these movies. Once the Mariachi trilogy, they're not movies that give a shit about that kind of stuff. They're just Rodriguez is all about that fun time at the movies, and Machete delivers on that. It's high class trash, I gotta say. The next year, a movie that I renounced at the time, uh, I was just like, I can't with this movie. I did watch it for the sake of completion, but I have to say, I feel better about it watching it now as an adult. Spy Kids 4, All the Time in the World, came out in 2011. The Spy Kids movie, I was excited, man. I was excited. I was in high school, and I was excited that there was going to be another Spy Kids movie, and I watched it, and I was not thrilled with it. I was not too hyped about it. Yes, Carmen and Junie are in it and everything, but they got the new kids and all this stuff, so that kind of turned me off to it a bit. But honestly, watching all four Spy Kids movies back to back to back to back for this marathon, I realized that Spy Kids 4 is a Spy Kids movie through and through. It's got the Spy Kids DNA, it's got the Spy Kids spirit. Carmen and Junie are in it. They're related. Um, and something I've noticed in all of his kids movies is none of the bad guys stay bad guys. Whereas his adult movies do enough killing to last, a lifetime. Uh, Nobody ever really dies in his kids movies, and every single bad guy has a redemptive arc. No bad guy remains a bad guy. Uh, Floop was the bad guy in Spy Kids 1. He's an ally in the rest of them, as is, Tony Shalhoub's character Minion. He becomes an ally later. Um, Donovan Giggles in the second movie. They saved him in the first movie. He was the villain in the second movie, and in the third movie, he was an ally again. By the end of the third Spy Kids movie, Sylvester Stallone is, given this redemptive arc, and he's not, a bad guy. And it's very interesting. There's not a single one of his kids movies that is like he's the bad guy and he's always bad and he's staying bad and we just hate it. And like, no, they always have a redemptive arc, and I don't know. It's just, if you get past the ridiculousness of some of these kids movies, they have really great messages in them. Shark Boy and Lava Girl has a great message about dreams and following your dreams, and not listening to other people when they tell you not to or try to kill your dreams. Um, and they always have great messages about family. The Spy Kids movies were really big on family, and Spy Kids 4 really has a big family message there, because this is more of a blended family type situation, with the kids not really getting along well with their stepmother, who turns out to be a spy and a member of the Cortez family. So it definitely held up a lot better down the line. It's a good Spy Kids movie, but it's definitely a separate thing from the OG Spy Kids trilogy. 2013, Machete Kills. Part dose of this Machete trilogy we're allegedly getting. Uh, Hopefully, it's weird. I didn't think I'd actually want to see it, but I do hope we do get Machete Kills again in space one of these days, because that fake trailer is it's great. Machete Kills was a lot more enjoyable for me this time around, watching it this time, as opposed to when I saw it in 2013 and I went to the theaters to see it. That because that at the time, when Sofia Vergara's character whips out the dick gun, and I'm like, that's the dick gun from Dusk Till Dawn, and I just had the little 4-room Spy Kid situation happen to me. And I was like, this is dumb. I just wasn't in the mood for it, I suppose. But watching it this time around, it's fun. It's just a fun movie, and it's even more fun than its predecessor. I think Machete's a little more serious, even though it is ridiculous and over the top. Definitely more serious than Machete Kills. Machete Kills just goes the full genre exploitation route of just having a good time with its story. A lot of actors we've seen in Rodriguez movies before. Uh, and Mel Gibson plays a great villain in this movie. There's some ridiculous shit in this. My favorite character is El Chameleon, who is played by four different actors in order: Walton Goggins, Cuba Gooding Jr., Lady Gaga, and uh, Antonio Banderas. All four of them play the same character of El Chameleon, and that was a fun part of the movie. And I hate that that was such a small part of this movie. I would love to see more of that character uh, eventually. And I believe these were some of the first roles, like film roles, Lady Gaga had. And I'm very happy for that because I think she's going to continue to do great things. She was great in A Star Is Born, and she was in that. And the next year, she was in Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, in a brief scene with Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Watching Sin City: A Dame to Kill For now, it originally came out in 2014. So having given it some time, it's not as bad as everybody tries to make it out to be. It's honestly, it's just more of the same from Sin City. I kind of just felt the same way about both of them this time around. I was just like, Sin City. This is just Sin City. Like I don't know. It lost a lot of luster for me over time. Uh, but this one was also they wrote two new stories for it. Frank Miller wrote two original stories, and then they adapted two stories from the comics here. Uh, it kind of takes place, jumps all around the timeline, some taking place before some of the events in the original Sin City, some after. um, I don't know, I don't have a lot to say about Sin City: A Dame to Kill For. In 2014, in the almost 10 years that had passed between the first one and the second one, technology definitely changed a lot, and they were able to essentially do all the same stuff but smoother. And that's all I can really say for the jump in special effects from the first one to the second one, because that first one was kind of a revolution in filmmaking, whereas the second one was just, okay, they've done this before, but now everything just looks a little better because the technology improved. uh, so now we're getting into there's a big jump there from 2014. 2019 is his next movie. There was one, it's called Red 11, and it's based off of Robert Rodriguez's experience. He was basically like a little uh, lab rat for this drug, and he did this to pay for El Mariachi. That's how he raised the money to make El Mariachi. So he wrote like a sort of thriller movie, and I guess there's like problems with the distribution, and so they haven't been able to release it. But it's been ready for quite some time. I think it's done. It's called Red 11. But 2019, Alita Battle Angel. That was one I had never seen before. I had a copy of it, and so, as I was doing my Rodriguez marathon, I decided, okay, now's probably the time to watch this movie. I'd heard decent things about it, and I was a little excited to watch it when I had watched Spy Kids 3 and heard that he does kind of revisit some of this stuff in Alita Battle Angel. I was like, okay, so that'll be cool. That's a difference between, Sin City to Sin City 2 isn't much of a difference. But to see that kind of stuff in Spy Kids 3D to this cool James Cameron produced, Alita Battle Angel, I think some of those little tournament scenes would be a little cooler. Unfortunately, if From Dusk Till Dawn is hands down my favorite of his 20 films, Alito Battle Angel is hands down, no competition, my least favorite Robert Rodriguez movie ever. I did not like this movie. I thought it was hella boring. And I mean, I like the cast. I like Rosa Salazar, who plays Alita. She's in this fantastic show on Amazon Prime called Undoing. Um, and I do want to see her, be in more things. It's got Christoph Waltz in it, and he's always great. But this movie is just so fucking boring to me. And I gotta say, teen romance is not Robert Rodriguez's jam. I got and this is just like, I don't know, man. It's like they really put the leash on him in this movie. Uh, Earlier, I said The Faculty felt like one of the least Rodriguez-y movies on this list, um, but it works. It still worked. The script still worked in his favor. Uh, he even directed an episode of The Mandalorian season two uh, this past December. Um, spoilers for this episode if you haven't seen it, because this one's fresh, and I'd hate to spoil this for you if you're watching The Mandalorian right now. But he directs the episode where Boba Fett comes back into play in a big way, and the bad guys take our favorite character. They take little baby Grogu and they get him at the end. But Robert Rodriguez directed that episode, and even that episode has these like Rodriguez elements to it that I'm like, I feel that. I feel like Robert Rodriguez's spirit in this movie, whereas Alita Battle Angel, I did not. It just felt like a run of the mill CGI fest, Hollywood tentpole movie. Uh, I every time I watch most things that James Cameron is involved with, I walk away saying, "Fuck you, James Cameron. I'm just not a fan." I think Avatar was such a cash grab bullshit movie, and feel free to argue with me about it, because I to this day I think it's, and I'm really glad people have started to come to my side on that. In 2009, a lot of people would get mad at me when I told them that Avatar was a piece of shit movie. And they're like, "Oh no, it's a technical." It's like, fuck you. I don't care about it. And in the time that's passed, a lot of people are like, "Yeah, that movie's not very good." It's like, yeah, it wasn't very good. It's never been very good. I just feel like James Cameron is, I don't know the guy personally, obviously, and who knows? I'm gonna, become a filmmaker someday and meet the guy, and he might be a fucking great guy. But just when I watch his movies, I love Titanic. I will say that I love Titanic. I love Aliens. I'm not saying I don't like movies he's made, but a lot of stuff these days, it just feels like such a cash grab sometimes. It just feels so soulless to me. And I always walk away so mad, like mad, genuinely pissed that I saw certain movies that James Cameron was involved with. And so it's a pattern. So my apologies to James Cameron if this is the case. I'll give credit where credit's due, but Alita Battle Angel was just not my jam, and I felt like they didn't need Robert Rodriguez for this, or at the very most, they could have let him do his Rodriguez thing and get a little crazy with it and make it more interesting, but just didn't think it was his thing. So we're back to 2020. We're all caught up. December 25th, 2020. We Can Be Heroes, the sequel to Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Uh, again, he still got it. He still, makes great kids movies for kids. And even as an adult, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it because I know what I'm getting myself into when I sit down to watch a Rodriguez kids movie. And as a Shark Boy and Lava Girl sequel, whatever. They brought Shark Boy and Lava Girl back, sort of. Taylor Lautner's not Shark Boy, which that was probably like my weirdest thing about it was the Shark Boy situation. But the little girl that's Shark Boy and Lava Girl's kid in this movie, Guppy, she's a little scene stealer. There's no two ways about it. And it's cute. It's got a great message. Again, it's one of those things where the villains don't stay the villains. And if anybody out there is watching this, let's discuss, is that not the president from Spy Kids 2? Or is this just the same actor playing the president again? That's what I want to know. I want to know if that's the same president from Spy Kids 2. Granted, because it's a new movie, I won't get into how this movie ends, but there's reasons as to why it might not be. But I don't know. I was curious. I was watching. I'm like, that's the president from Spy Kids 2. I don't know. Let's talk about it. But We Can Be Heroes. It's just great family fun. Robert Rodriguez movies. It's great family fun, especially for kids. It might not appeal to you as an adult, uh, but for kids, they're going to have a great time with it. And We Can Be Heroes is still, that came out on Christmas Day, and I was actually surprised to see that of all these Christmas Day releases, it's been one of the biggest streaming movies since then. Like a ton of people have been watching it, to the point where even I want to say like yesterday, I looked and it was still like in the top 10 on Netflix, uh, which good. And I recently heard they're making a sequel as well. So there's going to be another, the second We Can Be Heroes, third Shark Boy and Lava Girl, depends on how you want to look at it. Uh, but they definitely set it up for that. And I liked the message in this, because the message is very much teaching kids to do better than their parents, I guess, and their generation to, you know, and I think that's a great message, especially for, you meet people who are like, I'm never having kids because I don't want them to come into this fucked up world. And it's like, I've always had the opinion of, well, teach your kids to make a better world, to do better. And this movie definitely has that message. And it has, a great adult cast, even though, they sideline themselves for the kids to do their thing. But it's just a lot of fun. And so, he's done some short films and music videos, and I wanted to get into all that, and I wanted to be able to like really get in depth on a lot of these movies, but 20 movies is a lot. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do another movie marathon again like this, um, especially with the way things are picking up for us. We got a lot of big things coming in 2021, and a lot of stuff we can't really talk about right now. It's in the early stages. Um, but just know, if there's ever a time on the Chase and Shep show where you feel like you're being sold short on Chase and Shep show content, it's for the greater good. There's bigger things happening behind the scenes, with music, with movies. We're making big moves, but Shep and I are going to do everything we can to consistently bring you the Chase and Shep show. Even if we got to alter things, even if we got to change things up a little bit, we're always going to find a way to bring you Chase and Shep show, and not let that die out. Uh, but please, join us on our journey in 2021. Thanks for joining me today to talk about these Robert Rodriguez films. Uh, and again, sorry this is sort of just thrown together, but like I said, you're going to be happy it was. Uh, and so that's it. That's all I got for Chase Scene Sunday. I'd tell you what I'm doing next week, but man, I don't know yet. I guess we'll find out next week on Chase Scene Sunday. Shep and I will see you tomorrow for Mental Health Monday. Help you get your mind right for the week. Until then, I was Chase for the Chase and Shep Show. Peace out.